This video will help you to conjugate verbs in the past tense in Arabic. This will help you prepare for your Arabic 132 course, your second semester. In the previous video, we talked about our past tense verb conjugation suffixes. So using this ta at the end of all of our verbs for the singular forms, and then using our na, our tum, and our u suffixes at the end of our plural conjugations. So let's read together, work on our pronunciation for conjugating the verb to drink in past tense. Ana sharibtu, I drank. Sharibtu. You masculine is anta sharibta. Anta sharibta. You feminine, anti sharibti. Anti sharibti. You feminine drank. What about he drank? Remember, he drank, we don't add any suffix. We just use the root of the verb. Hua shariba. But make sure you're pronouncing the fatha above the last letter. Whatever that last letter is, make sure you're pronouncing the fatha, that that short a sound above the last letter of that verb, right? So you want to say, don't say hua sharib. Don't do that. Say hua shariba. Hua shariba. Hua shariba. He drank. What about she drank? Hia sharibat. Hia sharibat. Hia sharibat. The plurals, nahnu sharibna. Nahnu sharibna. We drank. And then you all, antum sharibtum. Antum sharibtum. Here is our suffix, tum in this case. And then our suffix for they did something in the past is u with a silent aleph at the end. So we say hum sharibu. Hum sharibu. Hum sharibu. And then remember, we can add our object pronoun suffixes to the end of these past tense conjugations to indicate that something happened to someone. In this case, sharibtuhu. I drank it, masculine. What is masculine that you can drink? Halib is milk, right? Or shai, which is tea. So sharibtuhu ashai, sharibtuhu al-halib. And then for the for drinking something feminine, sharibtuha. I drank it, feminine, sharibtuha. And what is feminine that you can drink? Al-qahwa, coffee, sharibtuha al-qahwa. And then just the subject, the idea of drinking ashurb, ashurb. Remember, our sheen is a sun letter, so we don't say al-shurb with the word the in front of it. We say ash-shurb, ashurb, ashurb, drinking. Ashurb, jayid, drinking is good. The next verb we introduced to you in 131 in present tense was shahada, shahada, but we're going to conjugate it now in past tense to help you prepare for Arabic 132. So if you wanted to say, I watched, for instance, a movie, ana shahadtu. Notice the stem changes here, right? Instead of the stem previously was shahid. When you conjugate it in past tense, you use a kesra underneath the soft H. But now you have a fatha over the soft H. So it's shahadtu. And there are ta suffix as part of our past tense conjugations. So ana shahadtu. I witnessed or I watched. I watched. Ana shahadtu. Ana shahadtu. You masculine, anta shahadta. Anta shahadta. Feminine, you feminine is anti shahadti. Anti shahadti. Notice our suffixes here. For I was tu, for you masculine was ta, for you feminine was ti. Let's go to he watched. Remember, there's no suffix, there's no prefix. In all these past tense conjugations, remember, there's no prefixes, there's only suffixes, except for in the case of he did something, right? But when we talk about he did something, you have to pronounce that fatha above the final letter, right, of that verb. So it's huwa shahada, shahada. Don't say huwa shahad, say huwa shahada, huwa shahada. He watched. About she did something. She watched. Hiya shahadat. Hiya shahadat. And notice there's a sukoon over the ta here. So the syllable starts with the dal, flows through the fatha, and ends with the ta. Dat, dat, right? Shahadat, 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 right? That's a sukoon. No short vowel, nothing there, just the consonant. All right. What about the plural forms? Nahnu shahadna, nahnu shahadna, nahnu shahadna. We watched. There's the na that indicates that we did something in the past, but that also serves as a pronoun suffix, an object pronoun, but that's not how it's being used here. It's being used to indicate who did the verb, right? Um, what about you all? Antum shahadtum. Antum shahadtum. You all watched. And then here's they watched. Hum shahadu. Hum shahadu. Hum shahadu. Right, with our silent aleph. And then if you wanted to say, I watched you, masculine. Shahadtuka. 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 If you want to say that to a woman, I watched you to a woman. Shahadtuki, shahadtuki. And then the idea, the subject, the concept of watching, the noun, al mushahada. This is the form that we use for our measure three verbal nouns. There are a few exceptions, but in most instances, we add a meme in front of the sheen or the first letter. Then we add the word the in front of that, and then we add a tamarbut at the end. Tamarbut. So al-mushahada, watching. Al-mushahada, jayida, watching is good. The next verb you were introduced to was darasa, which is to study. We'll focus on the past tense conjugation. Now remember, the stem for the present tense was different. It was a dal with a sukoon over it, dal with a sukoon over it, followed by a ra with a dhamma over it. So it was adrus, nadrus, right? Adrus, right? The stem changes, remember, when we go to past tense. So now we have a fatha over the dal, a ra over the dal, and you may it changes over the scene, over the last letter it will change. But so this is ana darastu. It's not darustu, it's ana darastu. I studied. Anta darasta, anta darasta for you masculine. Anti darasti for you feminine. Anti darasti you studied feminine. Remember with our he did something or it masculine, pronounce that fatha over the last letter. Hua darasa, not hua daras, not hua daras, hua darasa, hua darasa. He studied. And then for she studied, hiya darasat, hiya darasat, hiya darasat. She studied. For we studied, nahnu darasna, nahnu darasna. For you all studied, antum darastum, antum darastum, antum darastum. You all studied. They studied. Remember, we have a silent aleph after the ooh, after the wow here, right? Hum darasu, hum darasu, hum darasu. And then if you want to say I studied it, and whatever it was masculine, darastuhu, darastuhu. I studied it. Darastuhu, darastuhu. I studied it. Darastuhu. If it's a feminine thing that you studied, like you studied a word, kalima, right? So if you studied a book, darastuhu al-kitab. If you studied a word, darastuha al-kalima. I studied it, the word. Darastuha al-kalima. And then the subject, the idea, the verbal noun, al-dirasa. Actually, it's not al-dirasa because dal is a sun letter, right? It's ad, ad-dirasa, 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 ad-dirasa. Studying, ad-dirasa jayida. Studying is good. What about our verb to reside? We've already covered the present tense conjugations for this verb. Let's cover the past tense. Now, remember, when we're conjugating this in the present tense, we have a dhamma over the kaf, right? It's askun. And we have a sukoon over the seen. It's us, that's the first syllable. Us, the first syllable is us. And then the second syllable is kun. So the stem is a sukoon over the seen and a dhamma over the kaf. But be careful here because when we switch to a past tense conjugation, because we just were doing present tense conjugation, when we switch to past tense, notice how now we have two fathas instead, right? We have a fatha over the seen, we have a fatha over the kaf, and then the sukoon over the noon will change depending upon what conjugation it will be. So the stems change, right? So this is instead of ana askun with a dhamma, it's ana sakantu. And there's our to suffix to indicate I did something, right? Our to suffix, right? So ana sakantu, ana sakantu. I resided, I lived somewhere. So, ana sakantu fi. I lived in some city, Medina, New York, right? Ana sakantu fi Medina, New York. What about you masculine? Anta sakanta. Anta sakanta. Anta sakanta. You feminine? Anti sakanti. Anti sakanti. I'm sorry, anti sakanti. Anti sakanti. And remember, with our he did something, make sure you pronounce that fatha at the end of the verb, right? It's hua sakana. It's not hua sakan. It's not hua sakan. It's hua sakana. Hua sakana. Hua sakana. He resided. He lived somewhere, right? Hia sakanat. Excuse me. Hia sakanat. Hia sakanat. Hia sakanat. Hia sakanat. Hia sakanat. What about we resided? Nahnu sakanna. Now you notice there it looks like there's only one noon there, but there is a shedda above it, which means there's actually two noons. Remember, our shedda indicates there's two letters, two of that type of letter underneath that shadda, right? So sakanna, sakanna, nahnu sakanna, we resided. What about you all? Antum sakantum, antum sakantum. Remember, tum is our suffix here. Tum, that indicates you all did something. Sakana is the verb, and then tum is the suffix indicating you all did something. Antum sakantum, what about they? Hum sakanu. Hum sakanu. With a silent aleph at the end. Hum sakanu. Silent aleph we don't pronounce, but the wow in front of it, we do. It's ooh. Sakanu. Sakanu. They resided. And then you could say fihi. They lived in it. Fihi. Like fi someplace. Balad. Fihi al balad. In the country, right? Or ma'aha. With her. They resided with her. Ma'aha, or the verbal noun asakan, residing, asakan jayid, residing, the residing. Remember, in Arabic we say the concept, the idea, the abstract, intangible thing, the thought, the concept, and then so we say the asakan, seen as a sun letter, asakan jayid, residing is good. We'll end the video here.